I'm James, and today we're going to look at Exodus 13, verse 17 through to 15:21. You'll likely find it most helpful to read the passage before watching this video, and having it visible as we go through the section. A link to the passage will be in the description. So this section shifts the focus of Exodus. Up till now, we've seen how Yahweh meets his people in their suffering and brings them out of slavery. Now that they've been freed, we will start to see what it looks like for Yahweh to dwell with his people. We'll get to know more of who he claims to be and how he claims to act. Israel's journey to and across the Red Sea is likely pretty well known to many. The focus of this section is given to us in verse 21 of chapter 13. Day and night the Lord was before them, guiding them in a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. You see, God is with his people, he's leading them. He even in that section leads them away from a possible war. He knows they'd flee back to Egypt, preferring slavery to a fight. But obviously neither is a good option, so he diverts them around Philistia into the desert. God warns them that Egypt will chase after, and sure enough, in verse 5, the Pharaoh just won't leave well enough alone. Clearly, the death of every firstborn son in the land, as terrible as that is, didn't leave a lasting impression on this guy. And so his army are off to bring back his slaves. Now, honestly, to think kindly about Pharaoh and the Egyptians at this point, you really have to ignore everything that they've chosen and said up to now. God hardens Pharaoh and the army, committing to them to what they've decided to do. And God brings Israel across the seabed of the Red Sea by bending nature with this miraculous act and destroys the Egyptian army. And finally, on the beach, on the far side of the Red Sea, Israel are free. And chapter 15, verses 1 through 21, describes the nation singing praises to the Lord. Praises for beating the Egyptian army, God's nature, his leading, and the future security Israel will enjoy. Verses 20 to 21 tell us Miriam, Moses' sister, leads the women with tambourines. The whole nation rejoices. A question that you may be thinking is, how could it be moral for Israel to behave like this, just moments after the slaughter of the Egyptian army? Well, whatever your beliefs about the truthfulness of the Exodus narrative, let's take a moment and imagine what it would be like for a people who've been kept in slavery for 400 years to suddenly be released, and for their captors who, for hundreds of years, have slaughtered their own baby boys, in the midst of chasing them down to drag them back into slavery, to be completely wiped out. You see, we know justice when we see it. For people held captive, it seems impossible to imagine them not feeling relieved, to know their enemy can't touch them anymore. And that's putting it lightly. When you look back over the Exodus narrative, Egypt have been given chance after chance to stop and to free Israel, but they chose not to. They've seen these miracles, they've seen God's harsh judgment, but yet they still choose to chase. We can unpick all of the details of the last 12 chapters, and we do that a little bit in some of the previous videos. So if you've got some questions, you might find going to different bits there might help you a little. We can unpick all of these details, and we'll find a legally solid case for the fair destruction of an evil people. But we also know it intuitively. We're pleased when somebody who we know ends a relationship with an abusive partner, or when a murderer is convicted. When justice prevails, our natural response is to be happy about it. And the more significant the evil that justice prevails over, the happier it makes us. You can try to deny it to support a critique of the Bible, but you'll have to ignore your own innate response to justice. But before you commit to doing that, I'd like to ask you to consider something. In light of the joy depicted in this song, Do you find your arguments against the Bible, against God, sufficient to convince you to disregard the possibility that there's any truth here and to just stop exploring altogether? So I ask that not to be antagonistic, but because I'm convinced that the Bible describes something more beautiful and splendid than we could possibly imagine. And the only conclusions we can therefore draw are either that the Bible tragically shows us the awfulness of the real world, that the real world just cannot match up with this staggering fiction, or it shows us what really is. It shows us that there really is this unbelievable beauty. The only thing that this can't be is foolish irrelevance. The picture depicted by the Bible is such that we have to see whether it's genuinely true. It compels us to. So if you're willing for a moment to set aside your presumptions about the Bible, I want to ask you whether this picture of God appeals to you. A God who is completely just, who will deal with all wrongdoing. A God who is infinitely good, who is so completely good that even our best goodness is infinitesimally small comparatively. One who is of the highest value, that there is nobody like him, that he is completely unlike anything else. One who acts according to his character, not just that he is just, holy and glorious in his own living room, but that everything he does is just that. One who, out of love, saved a people who didn't deserve it and chose to lead them. One who, out of love, will guide that people to the same holiness that he is. One who is utterly reliable, so much so that whatever danger or suffering we will ever find ourselves in, he is there with us. A God who is going to be in power forever, not a momentary election term, but an eternal promise, an eternal reign. If that picture of God appeals to you in some way, if that seems desirable, then I urge you to keep exploring, to keep challenging what you know. Because if that picture of God is beautiful, then it's absolutely worth the effort to know if it is true. And it's not to say that we should get carried away with a beautiful picture. There's no point getting distracted by a forgery of the Mona Lisa. If it's not the real thing, if it's not true, it doesn't matter. But the beauty in Scripture, the beauty in the Bible, gives us an indication of something that is worth working out whether it is true. I'd love to explore those sorts of questions with you. If you'd like that, then please get in touch. And if you'd like to get a better understanding of what I mean by the beauty in the Bible, then do please get in touch. I hope you found something here helpful and interesting. If you'd like to let me know what you think of this rather large chunk, I'd love to know what you're thinking.